Welcome to the Headley Highlight Show's Headley Headspaces. The Headspaces are a series of thoughts and musings I have during the course of the week, and then I chew all over them with you. And this week's Headspace is called The Slippery Slope of Populism and the Folly of Keir Starmer When You Follow It. Before I jump into this week's Headspaces, I just want to say thank you to all of the people who have been coming to my show on X for the last 3 years, and also all my new subscribers. I've got 1,093, I think it is now. So I'm aiming to get to 1,500. So I thank all of those who have come to the show, all of those who have subscribed, and all of those people who have made a donation at my website, which is denisehedley.com, where you can buy me wings and chips, or the amount of money for wings and chips, or you can get me rice, peas, chicken, coleslaw, and salad from my local Caribbean shop. My show is aired every Friday on X, 8 p.m. GMT, 3 p.m. Eastern Time. So right, let's jump straight into this week's Headspace. Entitled, The Slippery Slope of Populism and the Folly of Keir Starmer When He Follows It. Last week, the Supreme Court ruled that a woman is defined in law by biological sex under the Equalities Act and under the provisions of the Equalities Act that it covers. The Equality Act covers public bodies, it covers employment law to a degree, in the sense if you're employed by a public organisation, the fire service, the health service, teacher service, all of those public bodies are governed by the Equalities Act. Now, what's happened subsequent to the ruling, based on previous contributions that Keir Starmer and members of his government have made, they are now finding themselves in a position of quandary, because they adopted a populist decision without significantly thinking it through, in my opinion, promulgating and bugling a message which the Supreme Court gave them a severe wake-up call from their populism by ruling that biological sex determines how the Equalities Act should be given. And if you do not qualify effectively under the biological sex rule, you cannot avail yourselves of protections under the Act. Now, what I'm going to play to you is just a little montage of the positions that Keir Starmer and Angela Rayner have adopted on the questions of trans rights and on the question of defining them as women who effectively have the same rights as biological women, who now the Equality Act has affirmed in its ruling. Let's listen to the positions Keir and Angela adopted.
Individuals who are born in a gender they don't now identify with. Some go through a process, others don't, and that is very traumatic.
And I think if we're able to have that debate in a constructive way, actually we'll be able to come to the consensus. Transgender women's rights are women's rights, and it is our women's movement collectively that can have the solution to that and can work with each other to it.
Is it transphobic to say only women have a cervix?
Well, it is something that shouldn't be said. It is not.
There you just heard Mr. Keir Starmer, Angela Rayner on various interviews during the time of the populism that was surrounding the questions around transgender rights, and them effectively riding on the crest of it so that they could be seen to be popular and also to garner votes with younger people. But what's happened now is that the law has affirmed differently. And now we have Keir Starmer finding it very difficult to effectively say he was wrong on the positions that he held. Into the fray, Kemi Badenoch and her Prime Minister's questions, where she gets 6, and she used all 6 to press the Prime Minister on the very same matter. His populist position, which he now appears to have to retract on, or backpedal, or do a U-turn.
Mr. Speaker, does the Prime Minister now accept that when he said that it was the law that trans women were women, he was wrong?
Speaker, let me be clear. I welcome the Supreme Court ruling on this issue. It brings clarity and it will give confidence to women and, of course, to service providers. The Equality and Human Rights Commission will now issue updated guidance, and it's important that that happens and that all service providers then act accordingly. This government's approach and my approach has been as follows: to support and implement the Supreme Court ruling, and we will; to continue to protect single-sex spaces based on biological sex, and we will; but also to ensure that trans people are treated with respect.
Yes, this is a choice between a Conservative Party that stood up for common sense and a Labour Party that bent the knee to every passing fad. This is a question about moral courage, Mr. Speaker, about doing the right thing even when it is difficult. And the truth is, he doesn't have the balls. The Prime Minister only tells people what they want.
Interesting idea.
He tells people what they want to hear. He is a weathervane who twists in the wind. He cheered an ideology that denied safe spaces to women and girls because he thought it was cool to do so. He hounded a brave female MP out of his party for telling the truth he accepts now. And now he is hiding behind the Supreme Court judgment. And isn't that because he doesn't know what he actually believes?
So here you have two contradictory positions that the Prime Minister is adopting. Previously, he was saying that biological sex didn't determine the fact that you were a woman. And now, post the judgment, he's saying it does apply. This is what takes place when you are populist, when your primary concern is optics and not substance. And in the famous words of my mum, he who stands for nothing falls for everything. And that's a very clear situation with Keir Starmer. The political position he now finds himself in is that he needs to do a U-turn, a backtrack, or a complete reversal of his opinions, primarily because the courts have affirmed that womanhood is determined by biological sex for the purposes of the Equalities Act. The title of this headspace was The Slippery Slope of Populism, and how that is the folly of Keir Starmer and his cabinet. Since the statement has been issued, there's been contradictory statements issued by members of his cabinet. And also, ex-Lords, Mr. Lord Sumption, said that the law is not necessarily needing to be followed in the way in which it was determined. In a sense, organisations are not necessarily obliged to enforce these same-sex spaces, for argument's sake. This judgment is an important milestone for calming the conversation around transgender rights, in my opinion. Keir Starmer and his cohorts of merry benders, we bend to any populist opinion and we'll champion that, have assisted in creating an adversarial position between trans women and biological women. Their lack of clarity and murmurings within their own backbenches. I read an article where in a WhatsApp group, a number of people were disgruntled and were concerned because of the guidances that are going to come out of the ECHR. He's now trying to play both sides of the argument. Typical Keir Starmer and this Labour administration. Limp and wishy-washy. Flaccid and lacking, in the words of Kemi Badenoch, any testicular vigour. They got no balls. Pardon the pun, given the subject matter. And now he finds himself floundering in the wind, like the seeds of a dandelion, waiting to be blown in any direction. So where are you on this situation with the trans rights debates? Do you think they had moved too far too quickly with the incursion into women's spaces which trans women were making, be it sport, health, corporate positions? Do you think this judgment has effectively put a brake on that? Do you think Keir Starmer and his government fall for everything and stand for nothing? Hence the quandary they now find themselves in. Or do you also think, like me, the trans debate has effectively diluted the questions of women's equality, women who are biological women under the Equalities Act? Do you think the trans debate and the trans movement has effectively silenced those women or quietened the areas where they wanted to see equity reached? And what about the impact on race equity and race equality? What impact has the trans debate had on that? And I think that one has definitely been pushed into the back and the foreground. So I've kind of left you with some big questions at the end of this headspace, which are not necessarily related to the main subject matter, which Keir Starmer and his populist government are essentially will jump onto any bandwagon. But there's also other things to think about too, and you might want to chew over them. Give me your thoughts, your three cities, your declining dollar price on this particular issue. Jump over to my YouTube and become the 1,000th and 100th person to subscribe. Or go to my website, which is denisehedley.com, and make a donation where I'm very partial to wings and chips. And you can give me the amount of money for that, so I can spend it at my local chicken shop or go to my local Caribbean shop. I'll need a little more if I'm going to get oxtail or a bit of scabeach and some fish. So do jump back. Thank you for listening. Give me your thoughts and come back next week. Toodle pips, darling, and cut!